Hello and welcome to MacMoto. This is Matt. So today I wanted to ask the question if it's worth, with a bike like the KTM 390 Adventure, spending a lot of money doing modifications and improving it, or was it a mistake to buy it and try and upgrade it? And should I have just bought a more expensive middleweight bike that has more capability off the showroom floor, wouldn't require quite as many mods? So I wanted to run through the numbers, kind of see what I've spent on the bike, what I could probably do without, and how that compares to those other bikes, and see what the price difference would be. And I think a lot of people would probably be asking this question out there, thinking that, is it worth spending $750 doing fork upgrades to this bike? It's not something that they would probably consider doing or think of as worthwhile. So let's go ahead and get into it. First, I'm going to run over all the money that I've spent on this bike so far as modifications go. And I've got a table up there, and you can kind of see everything that I've put money into. So you can see in total I'm about $3,500 worth of upgrades to this motorcycle so far, which is obviously a lot of money. The MSRP on the KTM 390 is about $6,400 back in 2021, and that's well over half of the MSRP just on upgrading this bike. So a lot of people would probably think that's foolish. So out of those mods, I'm looking down at the list there, and there's not really anything there that I would take back. The only one that I can look at and say that I probably would never do again is the USB outlet, just because of how difficult it was to install. But at only $30, that doesn't really move the needle any on this overall cost of doing this. Most of this stuff I think is pretty necessary, or adds to the capability of the bike. So no real big regrets there. Then if you look over, I also have a list of what I consider to be the bare minimum mods that I wouldn't really ride this bike the way that I ride it without having done these mods to it. I think it would be foolhardy not to have these modifications done. So among those, hand guards, that saves your bars, levers, and grips every time you go down. If it wasn't for those, you'd constantly be bending or breaking levers. So absolutely essential. The headlight guard, that's just pretty cheap the way I got it from Amazon there. So that's a cheap insurance, maybe not quite necessary. The radiator guard, I would still do that again just because I want that extra protection. And skid plate and engine guards, those are pretty much an absolute must on this bike for riding it any kind of rocky or difficult terrain. And then the mirrors, just because these double take mirrors are really nice, and they give you that assurance that if they hit the ground or hit a branch or something, that they're not going to break off. But other than that, if I was just going out to ride it bare minimum, I could probably go without all the pannier racks and luggage racks and stuff, and either just do a rackless system, which of course that's still going to be a couple $100, probably bare minimum to do a system like that, but it's universal and you can move it around to other bikes, so it might not really be a cost that you'd feel too bad about making. But that's a way that you could really cut down on how much you invest into this bike, I think, by not going with all the hard luggage and pannier racks. Though I feel like the ones that I got for this bike were a pretty good deal. I would skip on all the performance upgrades. It's nice having the nicer sounding exhaust, and it probably has a little more power and better power band. But I think the bike was pretty much totally rideable as it came out of the factory there. And then I didn't really include it in the bare minimums, but since it's only about $10, I probably would throw on that front sprocket. That's a real cheap, easy, and big improvement there. But yeah, most everything else you could kind of do without. And maybe the only other thing that I'd throw in that list that I didn't highlight was tires. If you're going to be doing a lot of dirt, off-roading. I think upgrading the tires, that $250, or depending on what tire you go with, that's a worthwhile investment. So as you can see, your bare minimum list might start creeping up as you keep thinking of the improvements that it makes. But I think the 390 Adventure, the stock suspension, seat, all that stuff is actually really good, and those are the only things that I'd really say is in the protection and durability of the bike. That's where I'd make sure to spend some money. So there you're looking about, let's just say $750 for bare minimum things that I wouldn't ride the bike without. And then I think a lot of things that people don't factor is they might look at this and say you bought a $6,000 bike and you spent $3,500 upgrading it. Well, now you're up at the price of, say, the T7, 10 700. Back in 2021, I believe its MSRP was about $10,000. So you're right up there at the price of one of those. But I think people might be forgetting that they're also going to spend a bunch of money doing mods to any of these bikes they buy. None of them come ready off the showroom floor. They're all going to need handguard upgrades. So I also made a table basically highlighting all the items on the list that I would probably spend money on if I was building a comparable bike and I had bought a middleweight. So on that list, like I mentioned, I'm going to be buying handguards again. Probably going to be doing the headlight protector, and obviously these prices would fluctuate depending on what bike you buy, but some of it would be I think fairly universal, or at least close to the ballpark, like the luggage stuff. But again, I'd want the headlight guard, radiator protection, and a skid plate on any of these bikes you buy. I think most people would agree with that. If you're going to be doing any amount of off-roading, you're going to want that kind of protection on those bikes too. Some of them, like say the KTM 890 Adventure R, I think they come pretty well protected as far as like you might be able to get away without skid plate and some other things. And I guess that goes one thing to show too is that the KTM 390 also comes with engine crash guards stock. So some of these bikes, I didn't factor that in, but you actually might be spending some money that's not on this list to put crash guards on those bikes. Then you're most likely, if you're going to be using it for any kind of travel and you want that luggage and you don't want to go with the rack list like I mentioned, then you're going to also be spending money most likely on the tank bags, panniers, and racks. So all that cost is equal between the 390 and any other bike as far as I'm concerned. Again, any of those bikes you're going to be probably upgrading the mirrors. I'd be putting a phone mount on it, put the spools on for maintenance. So while it's still leaves a lot of big ticket items off from what I've done to my 390 Adventure, you're looking at roughly the better part of $1,400. And that pricing will fluctuate obviously, but you're looking at a pretty sizable chunk of money there, about a third of what I spent overall on the KTM 390 Adventure, just to kind of do the same stuff to these more capable bikes. You're saving money because maybe you're not having to upgrade the suspension because the suspension's better out of the box on these bikes, but you might still be spending some money on that. If you want to get those bikes sprung to your weight, you're going to be spending a couple $100 at least. So that's going to also close up the gap. So that's something to consider, is that my 390 as it sits now is better suited to me than these other bikes are going to be off the showroom floor. So in a way, my bike is going to be a better fit and more capable because obviously it's been customized. So if you want that same level of customization, then you're going to be spending more money again. So as far as all that goes, that I think when you go over and look at what the MSRP of these, and I just chose 3 middleweight bikes, I wanted to show that should I have gone to just a middleweight bike, a more capable bike, a lot of the bikes that people look at as more hardcore adventure bikes, what their MSRPs are, and you can see that in the table. And then also, once you add that bare minimum estimate of upgrades, Now let's compare the cost. So you can look at the table there and see that the 390 Adventure with the 3,500 that I've spent on it is just under $10,000. Whereas that's where the T7 starts price-wise. Once you add the mods on it, then you're up to about, let's say, $11,400. So you have a cost difference there of about $1,400. So not a lot there. So I think you can easily make an argument that maybe it would have been better just to buy a T7 out of the box. But I'll kind of circle back to why I think there might be a big asterisk to that statement. So, and then kind of the king of the middleweights there, the KTM 890, and I just went with the base Adventure. I didn't go with the R because I felt that was kind of a fairer comparison. I think everybody knows the R is the king of the crop when it comes to the middleweights, and it's a premium bike. But even the base Adventure, I mean, there you're looking at almost $14,000 as far as I could tell with MSRP and adding the tech package, which would kind of equal some of the features that comes on the 390 Adventure. And that's also one thing I guess I forgot to add it on the list there, but I paid $150 to have the quick shifter added to my bike. That was the only upgrade that I had to pay for the software. So if you added that, that'd pretty much bring you right up just over the $10,000 mark for my total build on my bike. But yeah, the 890, so with the tech package, which I believe from looking it up was about $600, you're almost to $14,000 MSRP, and then once you add the equipment, you're over $15,000. So there you got a $5,000 differential between the 390 and the 890. And then another bike that interested me in the middleweight category is the Touareg 660, and I think that's a better comparison than the T7 because the T7, as far as I can tell, it doesn't carry a lot of the features that the 390 does as far as technology wise, whereas the Touareg is really well equipped with electronics and is seems to be a pretty well-renowned adventure bike for the middleweights. It would definitely be high on my choice of a bike in that category. So that's $11,500 as far as I could tell for 2021. And then once you add the equipment on, you're getting close to the $13,000 mark. So we'll just say roughly a $3,000 difference in price. So a lot of people would look at that, and I think a lot of people, especially looking at the price differential between the T7 and the 390, would, definitely say that I would pay an extra $1,400 to get, the T7 over a 390 that's been all modded out. And I think there's a lot of reason to that, and that was one of the questions I had going into it. Should I have just bought a bigger bike? But I think that some of the things that's being overlooked in that question is the advantages that I have with the 390. First of all, it's 50 pounds lighter at least than any of these bikes here. So you pay a lot of money in the motorcycle world sometimes to get a lighter bike. I mean, you look at the price difference to get a KTM or Husqvarna 500 or 350 or a Beta dirt bike, just to shave off 50 pounds from some of the other motorcycles in those categories, you're paying a huge premium for that weight savings. So I think that's something that should be factored in, is that this bike is a lot lighter, and I think that makes it a far better bike for difficult terrain than some of these middleweights, as far as being out there, and especially like myself, riding alone and having to pick that bike up by yourself. Then also, say, like I kind of touched on there, in comparison to, say, the T7 especially, the 390's technology suite is far better than the T7. It's got the phone connectivity, it's got the switchable different modes for ABS and the lean angle, and traction stability, all that safety equipment. And you know, I know there's people that see that as a bonus with the T7, that they don't have all that stuff on there, but I've really enjoyed having that on there. I think it does come in handy, and it's come in to help. Every once in a while it might be a pain in the butt, but that's just a minor nuisance. And then say compared to the 890 and Touareg, the advantages of the 390 again just come down to the weight and maybe the amount of money you got invested. Though again, that might be another topic. Is, you know, I will heartily admit that I don't think there's the resale value is going to be where this whole equation goes out the window. Is that the KTM 390, especially after throwing so much money in it, it is never going to fetch much of its resale value back. It's going to be a huge loss. It's going to be a huge loss when you go to sell this bike. I think, you know, you would probably want to strip off some of the features and sell them independently to try and recoup as much as you can. But that's the unfortunate thing about a 390, and especially that this isn't like the spoked wheel version. Now they have the spoked wheel version. So I'm sure that if I wanted to go sell this bike or trade it in, I mean, I'm going to lose a ton of money. Whereas obviously with a T7, 890 or Touareg, I'm guessing you're going to recoup a much larger percent of your price there. So that I think is the biggest argument. And so I went into doing this video just to answer the question and kind of just actually bring up the numbers and look at the numbers, because I didn't know myself how it was going to work out, and it's kind of always been in the back of my mind. Something that I thought about is, as I purchase each of these upgrades and want to try and make this bike better, is this a worthwhile project, or am I kind of headed down a road of no return here and a sunk cost where I would have been better to buy something else? But I honestly, I don't, my summation of it is I don't regret what I've done to this bike. I think I've made a really capable, fun, enjoyable bike, and I don't ride this bike and feel like I don't have enough power or capability with it. And I don't really see that I need a bigger bike. And then this one, again, at the price that I've spent, I've got a bike that's more customized to me than any of these bikes are. All these bikes are probably going to need suspension adjustments to be as tailored and have as high grade of components as the 390 has now. And just a lot of other little things would have to be done to it. So I think this is a personal question everybody will ask themselves, but hopefully this information helps some of you that are looking at this bike and asking the same question, because I know that I thought about the question. You know, it is appealing when you go in there to be like, I'm only going to be paying $6,000-7,000 MSRP for this bike, so that's a huge savings compared to a T7 or a larger bike. But are you really saving money as far as what capabilities you're getting? And so I hope this information kind of helps people take that and they can make a judgment call for themselves. You might look at these numbers and think the KTM 390 is a total waste of money, and you're going to be way far ahead by just making that initial large investment in buying a mid-size bike. Or you might like the idea of having a tricked out 390 that is going to be the right fit for you, with a better, for the same price, well, less money than you would spend on these other bikes. You're going to have a more tailored bike to you that's just a little nicer and might fit you better, and is obviously going to be lighter. So again, thanks for watching. I hope this has helped you and maybe intrigued you with the same question that I was asking myself. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully you liked it, and maybe you'll consider subscribing. Thank you.